Welcome to Start PT Now podcast and let you know what's going on in your world and my world. Your guy, my guy, Rye guy.
Really awesome show ahead here today. We're joined by Bria, Flexologist and General Manager for StretchLab here in Olney. Welcome, Bria. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, not as excited as we are because we are somewhat in the physical therapy world and I have a million questions about the stretch world. So, first and foremost, Bria, how long have you been a professional? Is it reflexologist or flexologist? Correct us,
That
please.
is a great question. It is a flexologist. So reflexology is a very different practice, typically utilizing the feet. So we don't do that. We do stretch your feet, but we do not specialize in reflexology. So it is flexologist. It is actually a term coined by StretchLab themselves.
Okay, very nice. And how long have you been with StretchLab?
Yeah, so I have been with StretchLab for a little over a year now. I started with our only Maryland location. So a few months before they even opened their doors, I was one of their first hires as a flexologist. And I've been growing with the company ever since. So moving up to lead flexologist, which I actually am, I still hold that title as well. And then moving up to general manager of the studio.
There you go. So you must have a pretty in-depth knowledge and understanding of everything that goes on there. Just for anyone who's not so familiar, I'm sure people hear the words like flex and stretch, and they think they know what they're getting into, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it that maybe they wouldn't know at a quick glance. I was
Yeah.
wondering, like, if you could maybe elaborate a little on some of the specific services and programs that you guys offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we offer one-on-one assisted stretching. And what is so special about what we do is we use a specific stretch technique called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. So that's PNF stretching. It's a big word, but it's really just about contracting and releasing the muscles. So our clients are engaged with us in this process, but it can be very relaxing. It can have so many benefits behind it. We do have studios that also offer group stretch sessions, which we actually hope to offer in the future. And with that, even though we don't have group stretching right now, we also teach our clients to do certain things at home. So we do assign homework. My clients are never surprised by that, but most of them keep up pretty well with it. And we want to make sure that you're keeping up with your journey and mobility, flexibility, whatever your long term, short term goals are at home, as we are helping you to progress them a lot faster than you could on your own here in the studio with us.
Well, Bria, let me ask you really quick. You said there's some benefits to stretching. What are the
Yeah.
top three stretches that most people benefit from?
Yes. Top three stretches that people benefit from. First and foremost, and this is a really simple stretch, but simply doing a forward flexion. So legs out straight in front of you, reaching for knees, calves, ankles, or toes, whatever is accessible for you. If you can get past that, congratulations to you. A lot of us cannot. But that is such a beneficial stretch. It is some of my clients' favorite. We typically end sessions with a stretch like that because it targets the hamstrings, sometimes even the calves, into the low back muscles, sometimes even the glutes. If we are utilizing your arms to give you a little bit of a pull from the front, you get into the upper back, into the trap muscles as well. It is a great stretch for a lot of different muscle groups. I would say my next favorite, internal hip rotation. This is an area that a lot of people don't really know how to stretch on their own. It's a little difficult to get into at home versus external, right? Turning your hips out, which is kind of easy to do in like a figure four position, maybe stretching the piriformis, things like that. So doing internal hip rotation on the bench here with us, which we do lying face down onto the bench. We assist you with that. I would say my third top stretch, this is going to be hard. Okay, so if we're talking sitting in front of a computer all day, a really great stretch, and I have a lot of my clients use a door frame at home, stretching into those pec muscles, using that door frame to anchor the elbow and turning out. pushing all of this back, opening the chest up is another really great stretch, especially for those who sit at home in front of the computer all day.
Speaking of being stuck inside in front of a computer, I know that your experience goes back further than even StretchLab. I was reading, on the StretchLab website and a little bit about your bio and saw that you did some yoga instructing certification, during the
Right.
pandemic time. And I was just kind of wondering, if you could talk a little bit about how maybe that training impacted your work at StretchLab or some of that passion for the body and, flexibility, mobility.
That is actually what led me here. I love that you did homework on me. I'm a little nervous about that though.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
So
you.
so yes, so I started doing yoga in during the pandemic, as you mentioned, and what that really stemmed from is even further back from that is I did dance in the professional world for a little while, and also through my college years. So when the world shut down and there was no more rehearsals and there were no more dance classes, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Because I can sit here and stretch myself out all day, but that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people to really sit there and try to focus on, okay, what do I do? What do I stretch? Right? How do I go into those muscles when there's no one leading me and actually be dedicated to it? Right? So I decided to go online and I was like, let's try yoga. There are people trying it. It's starting to become a thing on this side of the world. So I started doing some videos of yoga online and I loved it. I was doing yoga classes morning, noon, and night during the pandemic, and it helped me so much, not only in my performance, but just overall in my mobility, just quality of life, moving through life. My energy was better. And so that's when I decided, okay, I want to work somewhere that helps people achieve what I'm feeling right now. And so I said, I'm going to start teaching yoga. And so I did that. I did some independent classes working out of Tacoma Park, which was really nice. And then I found StretchLab. I had never heard of this concept before. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. My daily job is going to be helping people do exactly what I love. And so I was really excited about that.
Well, it sounds like amazingly beautiful story that you found actually your passion, as most people try to find. And I know yoga is something that's very spiritual to a lot of people. Can you explain to me the difference between a yoga class and maybe taking a session with you in StretchLab?
So the difference, right, when I talked earlier about that proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, right, in yoga, to some degree, in some poses, depending on how advanced you are, you can kind of create that same effect in that contract and release if you have that level of advanced difficulty. That's not something that I would typically advise if you're just starting out in your mobility journey, right? And so coming in here, one, you have someone that's able to assist you into the stretches and help you to go a little bit further than you would on your own at home. Sometimes it's difficult when you have to hold up your own body weight to stretch into a certain muscle. That's a little bit harder. So when we're doing yoga and things, we have to be a bit more engaged physically in a stretch, which sometimes doesn't get us the greatest outcome in the stretch that we really could receive if somebody else was giving us that assistance, right? Then you have that contract and release that actually helps you to go a little bit further. And having someone to contract against and to guide you deeper into that stretch in a safe manner, that's what we're here for, right? So we have plenty of clients that do yoga on their own, and then they come into us and we help them to progress a little further than they would on their own.
100%. I mean, we're sort of talking about the value of having that one-on-one sort of interaction with a client that can really give you that more personalized experience, really. And we find that to be really effective. A lot of people appreciate having that dedicated care, and that's something that we really emphasize a lot at Physical Therapy Sports Medicine Center as well, making sure that people feel like they're being uniquely cared for and given attention to their individual issues. I do want to ask too, with that, in what ways, because apart from just the physical aspect, I know there's also a mental aspect that goes into everything. I was wondering, in what ways does StretchLab contribute to overall like mental and physical wellness, just beyond flexibility?
So stretch has an amazing benefit of stress relief and also better sleep quality. So we have clients that come in that are having trouble maybe with cramping at night. We have a lot of people that hold tension in their body from stress on your day-to-day life, right? And your body holds on to that. The muscles remember the stress and the things that you're picking up throughout your day. And so when you come into StretchLab, I've heard a lot of our clients say there's almost like a euphoric feeling when you're getting off of the bench because the muscles have released so much of that tension, so much of that stress that you sometimes don't even realize that you're holding on to. A lot of clients hold that right in the upper traps, in the neck, shoulders, even in the hips sometimes, which is a main area that a lot of people don't realize hold trauma and tension. So when you come to StretchLab and you leave, there's a big sense of release that, like you said, goes well beyond the physical qualities that come from this.
Well, it sounds like not only are you waking up the mind, but the body itself. And one of the things you said earlier, and we're joined by Bria from StretchLab here in Olney, Maryland at the Olney Town Center. Mobility training, I love that term. Now, let's say I'm an active weekend warrior where I like to do 12-ounce curls. Is there certain stretches that you guys can just focus on so I don't have any problems having a beverage after 5?
Yeah. So one of the stretches that you can do, and I love utilizing like walls and hard surfaces, right? So we try to replicate what we're able to do in here with having some type of support. So even just pressing your hand right flat against the wall and turning outward to get a little stretch into the bicep is helpful. And doing that on both sides as well, especially when we're talking about doing curls here. But even also sometimes when we're using the muscles that are stabilizing us where we are. And so stretching right even behind the triceps, right? Even doing some sleeper stretches. And it's kind of hard to demonstrate when I'm not necessarily using a wall or anything like that. But sleeper stretches. So when you're lying down, giving yourself some shoulder mobility and rotation here, right? Just to make sure that this muscle has everything that needs support and that there's no super tense areas around that.
Sounds like I'm going to have a happy hour eventually.
I think another aspect, we've gone through the mental, the services, the flexibility that comes with getting the services provided by StretchLab and, that one-on-one attention versus on the other side of things. I know with physical therapy, we're mostly looking at people who are already injured. They're rehabbing from something, maybe they're not so much in the beginning stage where they're trying to adjust their body to get away from the potential of injury. With all that in mind, I wanted to ask how you see that maybe a service like StretchLab can assist in people who are, going through some sort of recovery journey or physical therapy as far as getting the most optimal end product for them.
So the biggest thing for people who are in a recovery state and they're going through physical therapy is compensation is a huge thing, especially if you've had an injured leg. Some people may be using the term baby, right? Babying their leg and trying to stay off of it if there's like a knee injury or something like that. And so all of those, the healthy areas of the body start to compensate for what that one area of the body can't do as effectively anymore. And so we have clients that are in physical therapy currently, and they come in here and we let them know this area we are not going to touch too much until you've been cleared by your doctors or physical therapist, whatever the case is. But what we can do is make sure that you are not overly tense in those areas that are now working harder than they have before because you've lost a little bit of either mobility, power, strength in other parts of your body. So it is super helpful. We partner through clients with their chiropractors, with their physical therapists, with other practitioners that they're working with, just to make sure that they are holistically taking care of themselves as they're healing.
Well, I love the fact that you guys have strong communication with the providers and everyone involved in this process. Now, Bria, let me ask you, let's just say I'm first time coming in. What should I expect from my first visit with you?
So when you are coming in for your first visit, first of all, you'll be greeted by a smiling face. But secondly, you should expect us to ask quite a bit of questions. We try to do that before you come in, but just as a physical therapist would need a lot of information about what's going on with you, so do we. So we want to make sure that we are going about your program safely, that we are stretching you out in a way that works for your body. So we're going to be asking you about your lifestyle, about your injuries and your surgical history. And I think a lot of our clients are kind of surprised by how much information they're thinking, oh, well, I'm just coming in here to stretch. I'm like, yeah, but one wrong move, I got to send you back to the doctor or the PT. We don't want to do that, right?
Right.
So we do ask a lot of questions about what's going on with them, but then we also really want to know about their goals. Like, what brought you in here and what can we help you achieve, right? So we want to make sure that whatever program that we put together for you, we are not only looking at what we see and we want to help you achieve, but also we want to make sure we're bringing into it what you want for yourself in the long term. Another thing that you can expect is we will do a mobility assessment. So we have a mobility assessment tool called MAPS, and that stands for Mobility, Activation, Posture, and Symmetry. And the way that it scans all of those things in your body is you do 3 overhead squats. It's great because a lot of personal trainers kind of do the same system, but they don't have that electronic feature to do the work for them. I love that I don't have to do all the work. So we get that scan done. It's a really cool piece of equipment. We get the scan done, we read it, and then we kind of take a look at what areas we need to focus on top of your goals. Once we bring you to the bench, we get you a manual assessment kind of measuring what the MAPS is saying, what the client is saying, and what we're finding on the bench. And that's when we put together a program for you and some goals ahead of us to make sure that we are going to reach those in optimal time.
Well, that's fantastic. And again, just want to say we're joined here by Bria, Flexologist and General Manager for StretchLab here in Olney. We really appreciate you spending the time coming out, answering a bunch of these really helpful and insightful questions. And we're really excited to hopefully have you back again soon and go through some more. I know I hardly feel like we're scratching the surface and just, the time here today. And there's so much great stuff to learn. So I just wanted to thank you there. And if it's all right, I had one last question for you before we wrap up today.
Yeah, go for it.
You were talking a lot about sort of what to expect, coming in, first appointment with StretchLab. And I know there's sometimes some confusion. Some people maybe come into physical therapy and they think, I want to come in, I want to get manual treatment and feel better, but they don't want to do any of the other work that comes with physical therapy, right? Like it's not just coming in and getting a massage. It is going through exercises and stretches. And then vice versa. Someone might be coming into StretchLab and have certain injuries that, that they're not really ready. They need to do extra work on top of that to fully rehabilitate themselves. So I did want to ask what advice you would give to clients who are trying to decide between starting with StretchLab or physical therapy, or how maybe they can incorporate both into their wellness routine.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are trying to decide where to start, to be honest, my vote is always going to be to start with a physical therapist, right? Because the reality of it is that there is a certain level of training that our physical therapists have in our community to make sure that the imbalances that we're seeing don't need to be strengthened or secured in a different way before we start elongating the muscles and you're coming into stretch and doing all of those things. What I love about that is once you are coming into StretchLab, right, you typically have a number of exercises and things that a physical therapist would give you that you can continue to work on at home as well. And then we're kind of helping more so with the recovery and also starting back with your mobility and your wellness goals moving forward as well. However, if you are unsure, you can always come into StretchLab and ask, depending on what's going on, especially if you have an injury. I'm always going to err towards the side of PT. But if you're recovering, if you've gotten past that point, or if you just have other goals that you're working on, maybe it's not a specific injury or things of that nature, but you have some goals that you want to work on and you just want better quality of life, come on in and ask us. But like I said, I kind of always err to our practitioners and our physical therapists as well. So again, my name is Bria, and I'm the general manager here at the StretchLab in Olney, Maryland. You can follow us on Instagram at StretchLab Olney. You can also find us on Facebook at StretchLab Olney. We look forward to connecting.